Hello everyone, this is part 12 of What If Naruto Was Female Orochimaru's Target, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Neji Hyuga walked through the village as he grappled with new information he couldn't quite understand. Individually, he could make sense of most of it, but together it was an unsolvable puzzle. The fight between Naruto and the Kyuubi had been just within his range, and he watched as someone a year younger than him had a spar with the strongest of the legendary chakra beasts. It looked closer to a boy playing with a pet than a battle to the death. If that were not enough, if Naruto being the victorious one wasn't inexplicable by itself, the prodigy Hyuga saw the Uzumaki use two bloodline limits, Hyoten and the legendary Mokuton. How was it possible to wield several bloodline limits? Was Naruto preternaturally gifted? A result of Orochimaru's experiments? Both. Even if he were the beneficiary of legendary genetics and/or astounding scientific breakthroughs, the red-haired ninja still had to train those gifts, along with using a unique version of the Raikage's lightning armor. Powerful. He could not speak of the younger shinobi's talents, but he knew power when he saw it. He'd chased it all his life. He'd considered himself the best of his generation, the Uchiha a close second. He chalked the Chunin exam's loss up to a fluke. After the fight with the Kyuubi, Neji couldn't delude himself any longer. While the battle with the giant fox was revealing, Naruto's words shook Neji just as much. The former branch member was able to conclude with no known heritage, but his status as a container a widely known secret. The residents of Konoha were likely unwelcoming of the boy. He recalled what the Aburame said at that get-together, and he was forced to admit the bug user had been correct. He only saw all Naruto had and never questioned what he'd lacked, what he'd lost. This left Neji perplexed. Fate was unchangeable and punished those that tried. When Neji first met the Uzumaki, he assumed him a failure, or at best mediocre. Years later, after being trained by two of the Sannin, that same boy had demonstrated he was anything but average. What Neji couldn't decide was, which was Naruto's fate? The ostracized pariah or the powerhouse? He should not have been able to go from one to the other. Winners and losers were chosen at birth, this was an unassailable fact. By lineage, Naruto was a winner. By circumstance he was meant to be a loser. Which was fate's design? Why couldn't Neji understand it? Why couldn't he see it? How had he managed to seemingly fight fate? Or did he simply correct its altered course? The Hyuga didn't know. Hated not knowing. His all-seeing eyes meant he rarely had to languish in ignorance, but he had no conclusions, only questions. Only the mystery that was Naruto Uzumaki. While Neji was trying to resolve his crisis of faith, Tsunade was busy staring daggers at Jiraiya and Hiruzen. Back in her office, after having plopped in her chair, she couldn't bother to hide her anger and disappointment at the pair. She decided to start with Jiraiya. "What the fuck, you stupid toady asshole?" she shouted, vein bulging on her forehead. "Just because it has toad in the word doesn't mean it fits now, Haim," Jiraiya remarked. He knew calming Tsunade down wasn't possible, so it was better to just let her boil over so they could actually talk. "You dare get funny with me now? I should kick you so hard you see the curvature of the planet." "That sounds painful, don't do that," Jiraiya responded neutrally, and as soon as the words left his mouth, Tsunade's fist went through her desk, followed by her grabbing him by the collar. "You better watch it, Jiraiya. It's one thing for Sensei to be acting behind my back. I expect it, as he doesn't care about anyone's opinion but his own," she started, and ignored how Hiruzen frowned at her assessment. "But I trusted you to be straight with me and respect that I am Hokage. Tsunade, I do trust you. This wasn't an attempt to move around you. At best, I could tell you the sky would possibly fall someday at some point. And realistically, what could you have done to prepare for this that didn't end in hundreds or thousands of people dead? If any one of us would have attacked the Kyuubi, he would have retaliated in full force. If you had the idea to use Itachi or Sasuke, assuming they were comparable to Madara, or that he actually managed to suppress the Kyuubi with just his Sharingan, it would have been worse. Naruto told me himself, the fox hates the Uchiha. All of them, no exceptions. Tenzo, frankly, isn't strong enough to suppress a Biju, and the only seal users who could possibly come up with something are all redheads, and two of them fear Orochimaru more than you, the other one is sleeping with her. That last one took care of the issue, no one got hurt, and a lot of things that needed to be said were Tsunade quickly considered his argument, and while she didn't have ready counters to most of it, it simply wasn't up to him to decide when he'd share a village-wide threat. Tsunade impressed upon Jiraiya that very fact, and he agreed and sincerely apologized. The Godime then moved on to Hiruzen. How much of your legacy, of your remaining time, how many of your relationships are you going to ruin trying to get back at Orochi? I told you I wouldn't tolerate you working behind my back, and you turned one of my ninja into a secret asset, spying on a high-ranking member of the village. You had no right. I had every right. You didn't have to sort through the dead babies like I did. You didn't have to chase her out of the village like I did. You just support her and this twisted relationship she has with Naruto-kun. You should be protecting him instead of encouraging this farce. So, knowing she hadn't changed, I enacted a plan. It didn't work, but I'm not wrong about her. You keep pushing and it isn't her you're going to have to deal with, Jiraiya observed, recalling the earlier conversation he had with his godson. Sensei, you're going to back Naruto into a corner, and I don't know why you can't see that. I'll make this as plain as I can, he just played with the Kyuubi. It took most of the senior ninja, you, Enma, Gamabunta, Minato and Kushina to restrain and seal it. What do you possibly think you can do to someone like that? You may think you're protecting Naruto, but he will protect Orochimaru. It's time to move on. Hiruzen was about to respond to his student but was cut off by Tsunade. Several of us have tried to talk you out of this vendetta, this quest to get her out of the village. You won't listen no matter how much it has cost you. You tried to kill her, Sensei. The daimyo could have had you executed. You had to resign in disgrace, and you'll never repair your relationship with Naruto. If I cut you out of village affairs completely, all your knowledge and experience would be wasted, but what else can I do? You're making it impossible for me to do anything but isolate you, place you under house arrest for the remainder of your days. Is that what you want? Of course not. But people don't simply change, Tsunade-chan. She's had designs on Naruto for years. Years. She's manipulated things, possibly him, for who knows how long. Do you believe they are anything approaching equals? He's an affection-starved young man, and she's used her wiles to exploit his weakness. Like she did with you being the implication. Tsunade asked. Is that the story you've been telling yourself? She seduced you. How do you know she didn't? Because I'm not fucking stupid, Sensei, Tsunade yelled. She took some calming breaths, forcing her anger away. It wouldn't do to beat her sensei to death. This is getting us nowhere, but just know this is truly your final warning. Act against her again and I'll lock what's ever left of you in your compound. We still have one more issue. There is no way word won't get back to Rei and Onoki. Both men looked grim at Tsunade's words. Strength invites challenge, Jiraiya whispered, wondering if his final student was clairvoyant. What's that, Jiraiya? Something Naruto said earlier, strength invites challenge. The problem is, Naruto's known abilities simply give Onoki justification to do whatever it is he was already going to do. You likely won't know where he falls until the Chunin exams, Hiruzen remarked. Tsunade nodded in response but wished she had a better read on the fence sitter. After his laughing fit ended, Naruto took a seat across from the murderer of his parents, the person that altered his very life course. Only the width of the stainless steel table separated the pair. Naruto studied the Uchiha's face. A mismatched pair of brown and green eyes would suggest someone had taken his Sharingan eyes from him. He had scarring on his face, clearly having suffered some major trauma. The man looked tired, or was it resigned, as if he had just accepted all that would come to him. The Uzumaki clan head didn't know what to say to the man. He never planned on talking to him, not even a witty remark as the man faded away. He was just going to kill him. But now, it wouldn't be unreasonable to assume he'd been subjected to some of Orochi's more questionable impulses. He looked broken, and while Naruto didn't care about his emotional state, it didn't leave him with a lot of motivation to strike the Uchiha down. Some might find it foolish that Naruto wasn't blindly driven by revenge, by all the pain this man caused him and all he took away. But to Naruto, that's exactly why he couldn't prioritize revenge. What could he do to the person that took his parents and caused the village to hate him, only to create an organization of monsters to one day hunt him down and kill him as well? To even get into the realm of retribution, Naruto reasoned, he'd have to bend the laws of space and time. True, he could just kill him now for his past actions. No one could possibly fault him, but it still felt hollow. He was prepared to neutralize a threat, and by all appearances it had been. Naruto had also felt for the Hiraishin marker his father had placed on the man, and it was still there. Once he'd reached for a marker, he simply didn't forget it, and this Obito person wouldn't get a normal Rasengan to the back this time. Why? Naruto finally asked. He didn't know if learning of this man's justifications would do anything but so much pain and misery, he simply had to know. The simple answer is a girl, Obito answered. If you rained destruction down on this village because you couldn't get a date, I am going to kill you. It appeared he could find the motivation after all. Obito raised his arms in mock surrender. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I didn't, despite what many may think. It was one of my genin teammates, along with Kakashi. You were one of my father's students. Naruto asked in surprise. He hadn't known that. Yes, Rin, my teammate, wasn't just some girl I had a crush on. For context, the Uchiha were not a well-liked clan during my childhood, and even amongst the Uchiha I was considered an oddball and a failure. I learned early that life could be mindlessly cruel. You know what, just hold out your fist, this will go faster, Naruto suggested as he became engulfed in Kurama's chakra cloak. The two men bumped fists and Naruto saw it all. Obito's childhood, his affection for and friendship with Rin, and rivalry with Kakashi. He saw how much the Uchiha respected his father and how he helped him deal with the frustrations of being in Kakashi's shadow. He saw the disastrous mission and the aftermath. He saw the real Madara play head games, and he watched Rin sacrifice herself. The emotion of the world coming apart at the seams was not one he could easily relate to. It was all-encompassing and infinite. Naruto watched the real Madara take a broken boy and warp him, shattering or perverting everything Obito believed in. He saw a boy become a young man, having given up on this world as meaningless. He watched the fateful night as Master unknowingly squared off against student, and all the years after. The change of the Akatsuki, the havoc done to Kiri. It was a tale of misery and violence that left near everyone worse off in their wake. As the link was severed, Naruto deactivated the chakra mode and gathered himself. She made it all make sense. Yes, I believed the world could be good because she existed in it. Madara twisted me to his cause so thoroughly that any thought that what I was doing was dishonoring her never entered my mind. This world wasn't real, so none of it mattered, Obito explained. It was Orochimaru that helped me come to the realization that Madara likely set me up to see Rin die, knowing it'd cause me to give up on everything. Naruto sat in silence, mulling over this new information. Obito had been a lonely kid that just wanted acknowledgement, and that was an incredibly familiar feeling. The Uzumaki couldn't ignore how the young man, a child still, was broken and manipulated by one of the greatest ninja to ever live. How he thought he was helping people to never truly experience what he had. Naruto couldn't relate to that level of despair, but he knew how hard he took it when he learned of Hinata's death and they hadn't been friends for years. Pain begets pain. He'd seen it with Obito, and even if she'd never admit it, Orochi-chan was caught in this cycle. Jiraiya wasn't wrong about the cycle of hatred. Revenge, the futile desire to even some non-existent cosmic balance when someone hurts you. Naruto never considered himself vengeful, but that was before he had to face himself, his long-buried hatred. A few different situations and he'd be what Obito was, someone with the justification to harm others and the permission to never feel guilty about it. So, what now? The special Junin asked. Obito seemed surprised by the question. If the widening of his eyes were a reliable tell. I honestly don't know. I assumed you'd kill me without a second thought for what I'd done to you. Killing you wouldn't bring my parents back nor give me a happy childhood. Doesn't mean I forgive you or anything like that, but you dead does nothing for me. And I don't know if there is redemption for you, but there really isn't if you're dead. There isn't. Everything I've done, there's just no coming back from that. I accept it. The irony is that I was so dedicated to seeing Rin again in this world, I assured I won't in the next. No torture devised hurts more than that. Naruto wanted to tell Obito he was wrong, if not for the sake of the Uchiha then his own. He wanted to believe there was a chance to redeem, to make amends as long as you were alive to do so. But that inclination warred with the slights of his past. He hadn't forgiven the villagers, he hadn't forgiven the old man, and even with this new information he wasn't sure how he could truly forgive Obito. He didn't hate any of these parties, but true forgiveness and acceptance was a long way off. Questions with no easy answers swirled in his mind as he responded. I am credited with ending a rebellion in Iron Country. The chief architect, Ito Watanabe, trained me for a little while I was there. He spoke a lot about his late daughter, Ritsu, often. How when she was little she would proclaim she'd be the first female samurai of Iron Country. He said she was brave and headstrong. She wanted to choose her own destiny and not accept the rigid role assigned to her. They argued a lot about that and he remained steadfast in his refusal to train her. He told me a lot about her but only revealed how she died the night before he rebelled. Some students he kicked out of the service paid him back by raping and killing her. Now, even with training, there was no guarantee that she would have survived, but with no training it was a certainty she wouldn't. It left him broken and he all but retired from his post, only training a select few students in a private school, Mifune allowing them to test inter-official service. He also became a champion for a more equal Iron Country, so much so it put him on the outs with Mifune. As he told me about his daughter's life, demise, and his change of heart, he also confessed the tremendous guilt he carried. He asked why did he have to lose his daughter to finally see her point. The next day I'm escorting Mifune's granddaughter, Tomo, and we get surrounded by dozens of Ito's former and current students. They, calmly, say they deposing Mifune and as an outsider I can walk away. The subtext being that they were going to kill Tomo. Backward-ass country. If they couldn't defeat Mifune outright, they were going to try to shame him into ritual suicide for failing to protect his family. So, here I was with a decision, allow this one innocent to be sacrificed for the potential of granting liberty and self-determination to countless others. I'm assuming you didn't leave her. I killed them all. But ninja arts are outlawed in Iron Country, even in defense of his granddaughter you'd have been arrested. Didn't use any ninja arts, just my sword. Anyway, after getting her protected, I tracked down Ito and we had a duel. What struck me was his smile, even as he lay dying. It makes me wonder if he knew this was the likely outcome. If I hadn't been willing to sacrifice one person, then he'd put me in the position to sacrifice many. Officially, I am a hero, but how many people see me as just another tool of their oppression? More concretely, how many more Ritsus will there be because I intervened and protected Tomo? You can't think like that, Obito cautioned. You can't carry that weight. I never learned to harden my heart and it shattered when Rin died. I became a monster. But it's all linked. An endless web of action and consequence. That's mostly beside my point anyway. For some I am a hero. For others, possibly a villain. But the truth, Tomo's governess turned attendant poisoned me earlier, the effects only kicking in once the fighting started. For most of it, I wasn't even seeing Tomo anymore, not that I realized it at the time. Thanks to Kurama, the poison wasn't going to kill me, but it was a bitch of a handicap. So, not a hero. Not a villain. I was just a drugged 15-year-old doing the best I could. And that's probably the truth for all of us. We are neither the best nor the worst things we've ever done. You may believe redemption is impossible, and maybe it is. But wouldn't it be worth it to try to get as close to it as you can? Do as much good as possible to rebalance the scales. Naruto asked with a shrug. Whatever you land on, at least talk to Kakashi first. He deserves that much. Obito nodded and Naruto got up to depart, Orochimaru still standing in the doorway. As Naruto reached the exit, Obito asked a question, how did you find out you were hallucinating? You said you weren't even aware of it, so how did you come to realize it? The next day Tomo came to bid Jiraiya and I farewell, neither wanting to stick around. As we were saying our goodbyes she asked me if I were really okay to travel. I assured her I was, but she didn't seem to believe me, so I asked why. She said that during the fight my attempts to be reassuring were a mixed bag because I was calling her some other girl's name. Naruto and Orochimaru departed, the mood quite somber. In an attempt to lighten the vibe, Orochi slides next to Naruto and kisses his cheek. Startled, Naruto asks, what was that for? Because clearly I was the woman you were hallucinating about. Kikuku, my Naruto-kun is so gallant. Keep it up and I might swoon one day. Naruto chuckled before saying, the one time I attempted to protect you I failed miserably and got my ass handed to me. It's the thought that counts, Orochi responded. You don't actually believe that, Naruto observed, finally eliciting a laugh from her. No, but it sounded good. The couple returned to silence as they returned to her study. Once everything was sealed, Orochi led Naruto to her living room, both taking a seat on her couch. I know you may have more questions, she started. Like the pair of Sharingan you've been hiding. Certainly makes me feel better you tore through my genjutsu, Naruto said as he tickled her side. He didn't really care she had them. I only implanted one into myself just in case you ever wanted an upgrade as well. But not just that, Orochi paused. She wasn't used to feeling uneasy about things, but she had to admit it to herself. She cared what Naruto thought of her, and while she was confident she knew what lines not to cross, even a hint of disappointment would affect her more than she liked. If I wasn't the person you were seeing in your poisoned state, then giving the timing I can guess who it was, so let's start there. Naruto-kun, Hinata's alive. How does anyone stand this heat? Tsunade questioned as she and her party neared the entrance of Suna. The weeks since the second Kyuubi incident had passed in a blink of the eye. Things in the village returned to normal, except for the rise of a new celebrity in Naruto. Speaking of her nephew, as punishment for withholding information about the Kyuubi, she lowered the price for his instruction. Anyone with the equivalent payout of a D-rank mission could get the son of the Yondaime to teach them Nin, Gen, Ken, or Taijutsu, and he could not use shadow clones to fulfill the requests nor shortchange Hanabi. True, she only keep it at that price point for 3 weeks, but the lesson was learned. You can regulate your body temperature, so you're only complaining about the idea of the heat, Tsunade-chan, Orochi pointed out, teasingly. She and Kakashi were covered in tan, lightweight cloaks and shamar. Tsunade was in traditional red and white Hokage robes with the diamond-shaped hat to match. The Godaime ignored her friend, feeling it was her right to complain about the desert heat regardless of how affected she actually was by it. The trio approached the valley entrance and were greeted by Temari. After an exchange of pleasantries and a security check, they were escorted to the arena. Orochi noticed the village was in much better condition compared to the last time she was here. What really stood out was a lush and green oasis with fruit-bearing trees and various ponds. It was, apparently, treated as a playground as children were seen throughout. Tsunade noticed the environmental anomaly as well. I haven't been inside Suna in a number of years, but that oasis looks newish, Temari-san. Oh, yes, Godaime-sama. It was a gift to Suna. Who could gift such a thing? The Godaime inquired. No one but Kazekage-sama knows. It simply appeared one night. Kazekage-sama said it was from a personal friend and left it at that. That wasn't remotely true. Everyone in Suna knew who made it, just like they all knew who Gaara's only acknowledged friend was, but unlike some villages, the residents of Suna knew how to keep their mouths closed. Arriving to the arena, Temari walked the Konoha Nin to location of the other cage. The area was open except for a sandstone ceiling, offering shade and temperature control. Temari introduced Tsunade and took her position behind Gaara, along with Baki. All 5 cage were in attendance, Gaara and Tsunade having worked out her arriving last. It was meant to send a subtle message that Gaara didn't require his closest ally in attendance with the other cage present, as the young Wind Shadow stood on his own. Tsunade took her seat as her party got into position, having removed their travel wear. You cut it awfully close, Tsunade-heim, Onoki said, a mocking tone to his voice. That's the arrogance of Konoha ninja. Even their pissy brat genin have it while having accomplished nothing, A barked, his head resting on top one of his hands. Tsunade chose to ignore the rakage. I'm sure you understand a ninja should neither be too early nor too late, Chushikage dono, Tsunade responded. The fence-sitter said nothing in retort. I have to admit, Tsunade-sama, I am disappointed your delegation didn't include Naruto Uzumaki. I understand him to have several treasures of Kiri and would love to work out a fair exchange. Item by item if need be, the Godaime Mizukage purred. Tsunade could sense a slight tensing behind her and hoped Orochimaru wouldn't reveal herself to be a jealous girlfriend now of all times. I hear the brat isn't allowed out of the sights of Jiraiya. How that boy going to ever be a man if you keep a minder on him? I am sure Naruto would be flattered by your interest in his development, Rakage Dono. As far as these Kiri treasures, I know not of what you speak, but if you would like to present a formal request I will, of course, give it all due consideration, Mizukage Dono. Mei simply smiled, having gotten the answer she expected. A tightened his grip on his chair and clenched his jaw, angered at having been dismissed again. Although, I also hear whispers that he has the most potential of any shinobi of any village since the Shodai Hokage himself defeated the very Kyuubi Minato was said to have killed with no help from anyone. Konoha is just a factory for genius ninja. Was there a point, Rakage Dono? Just remarking on your village's ability to churn out bullshit Superman stories about your alleged prodigies while you hide them away. At least Minato was out in the field so I could take his measure. Kikuku, From my understanding it was Minato-kun who took yours, Orochimaru retorted, much to the ire of Kumo's leader. Whatever stories you may have heard and however they have come to be, you must choose for yourself whether or not to believe them. We in Konoha like to concern ourselves with ourselves, Tsunade added. History would tell another story, Onoki countered, referencing Konoha's participation in all 3 shinobi wars. With the exchange having died down, Gaara called an official start to the finals. As the 5 shadows of the ninja world watched a proxy for war, several could only think about the real thing. And while they were preoccupied with the thoughts of war, their seconds were vigilant for any signs of aggression. All except one. The most infamous woman in the hidden villages wasn't concerned with war or children exchanging love taps. She only wanted to get this trip over with so she could share the good news. Tsunade confirmed herself, 8 weeks along. Naruto-kun would have an heir, a child of his own. And she'd tap into previously unexplored reserves of cruelty and sadism if anyone should attempt to harm his child. It was a promise of a lifetime. Frail and defeated were a far cry from how Shino had started his day. He was so confident in his victory, that Konoha would burn under his superior might, intelligence, and technology. It had all gone so smoothly it felt like fate. And thanks to Zetsu, he even had enough information to reliably target Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke. His longtime associate never revealed why he wanted them to die in particular, but it didn't matter, as he was going to have as many Konoha killed as possible anyway. It all went wrong. The Sky Fortress was infiltrated and his ninja killed before initial takeoff. The Uzumaki and the Hyuga took turns dismantling him, showing him that rapid regeneration wasn't always a boon. He was stabbed and cut repeatedly. Burned. Electrocuted. Drowned. Made paralyzed by gentle fist strikes. The Uzumaki sealed the Zero Tails as if it were a mere academy exercise. With the Zero Tails gone and his chakra system compromised, Shino had to suffer through a genjutsu of being torn apart by panthers under a blood-red moon. His current location was interrogation as, he assumed, the villagers best went to work. He'd already given up A and Zetsu's involvement. He didn't know what more they wanted, but the purple-haired woman just wouldn't leave him be. He was so tired and his once muscular frame had withered to near nothingness. What more do you want? He asked. Oh. I'm just curious about something. Seems like you could have been taken in without much fuss, but those 2 boys worked you over. So, what did you do to piss one or both of them off? Shino groaned at the memory. A piece of intel Zetsu had given him about the Uzumaki's relationship with his former associate, Orochimaru. He goaded the boy, suggesting there was more to their relationship than was true. By the time he said she'd do anything for an immortality jutsu, he felt a sword through his heart. He dropped to the ground in shock, and when he looked up, those blue eyes weren't even angry. They were filled with pity. The Uzumaki then said something to the Hyuga about assholes always making things personal and never knowing when to shut up. Shino was a smart man and had no intention of repeating what he said to Orochimaru's sadistic student. Anko laughed at his silence as she resolved to get the full story from Naruto when he got back. Kiribi, Yugito called, attempting to get her fellow Jinchuriki's attention. He seemed, not distracted but lost or in a state of disbelief. They were currently in the land of rivers, as B insisted they come support Raikage-sama's planned ambush. It was unusual for him to be so serious. Yo, where's Big Bro's main man to carry out the master plan? He inquired. She couldn't answer that as Dodai should have been here, along with the 100 other ninja assigned. But there were also no signs of combat, the scene looked undisturbed. Pristine. Almost perfect. She looked at Kiribi in shock as the real meaning of his question sank in. You think Konoha and Osuna intercepted Dodai's ambush and cleaned up to this extent? Mr. 9-0 applied the pressure and let the pipe burst, treated our best like they were light work. Mighty 8 senses his bro, the Uzumaki's a pro. Yugito scowled at some of her comrades seemingly being wiped out by one boy without a trace. It made everything Asama said about him seem true. Konoha had prepped a secret weapon with a grudge against Kumo. It also suggested the attack on Konoha failed or the Uzumaki would have been otherwise occupied. They had tipped their hand and were now fully exposed. Do we try to catch him? Yugito asked. B didn't answer immediately as he mulled over their options. Crossing into the land of wind would be seen as an act of war, and while they had all but declared as much against Konoha, they had not with Suna. However, if his brother learned the ambush failed and Dodai was killed, he would react with pure emotion, namely rage. He didn't know if his brother could best two of the Sannin and Hitaki Kakashi, but he knew he couldn't handle all three of the Inkonoa's Jinchuriki. It wasn't even about which was the smart move, there were none. But deciding the least bad option. A sense of dread originated in his stomach and spread ever so slowly throughout his body. Be feared today may be a watershed, that something irrevocable may happen. If that were the case, then he needed to be by his brother's side, because whatever his faults, that was still his family. We creep on the low but push hard in case big bro blows. Yugito nodded and the pair departed without further delay. I noticed she subtly stiffen, a sigh. His Sonorin had become alerted to something concerning. The second of his escort duo was no coward, so for something to worry him, even slightly, was worth paying attention to. A low-level drone pulled away the Kazekige's sister, the Snake Sannin following behind her. He felt the need to at least mention this, as if this were a hit, he'd let them know they'd hidden it poorly. Onoki was simply quicker. My, the two allied nations' escorts seemed to be departing. One might assume something nefarious, Kazekige Dono. I assure you I wish none here any harm. And you, Tsunadheim. You allow the snake free rein, should we ready for battle? If you aren't always ready for battle, Onoki Dono, I'd suggest you retire. Any follow-up response by Onoki was cut off by the snicker of the Mizukage and the return of the Kazekige's sister and Orochimaru, the snake Sannin smiling from ear to ear. The wind mistress approached Gaara, whispering something I could not hear, and watched the child cage nod. The girl departed briefly but returned with a guest in tow, Uzumaki Naruto. It was Ai's turn to stiffen. The attack on Konoha was scheduled for today, and he was sure the brat hadn't been allowed out of the village since his return. Either Shino crossed him or something went wrong. Honestly, I just wanted the delusional man to cause a lot of structural damage, so he hoped the fool managed that. No, what truly concerned him was the contingent of 100 Jonin shinobi he had stationed in the land of rivers, led by his attendant, Dodai. The boy didn't have a scratch on him, and while that could be explained as far as wounds, even his clothes were pristine. A gritted his teeth. It was highly unlikely he managed to avoid his ninja. More than likely Minato's bastard killed them and then strolled into Suna as if nothing had occurred. A took the briefest moment to acknowledge the sacrifice of his ninja and the loss of his loyal companion. Dodai would be dearly missed. A was afforded this show of reverence, even if hidden, because all eyes drifted to the red-haired shinobi. They watched as Gaara stood up and greeted his fellow container as a friend and an equal, a handshake and a half-hug followed by words of welcome. Naruto greeted the rest of the cage, begging their forgiveness for the intrusion. With no additional seating, Kankuro offered his place and left the viewing area. I finally took a good look at the young man, not having seen any updated pictures of him besides what Rasa provided. Jiraiya had been maddeningly efficient in neutralizing all of A's intelligence agents, killing each one until A simply stopped sending them. The Toad Sannin hadn't lost a step, and it frustrated the Raikage greatly. Decent height for his age, toned but nothing too impressive. The boy had too much of his mother in him, looking very little like his rival in speed. But what I noticed, and detested the most, was the boy's ease. All 5 Kage and this child that has never seen true war stands amongst them as an unspoken equal. The very thought made the Raikage's blood boil. Then A remembered Dodai. He was too seasoned to believe his man wasn't dead, killed by a mere child who now stands in the same room as A as if he's done nothing. Or as if A could do nothing to him. Arrogant. Gallingly arrogant. A barely pays attention to the rest of the exams, children slap boxing holds no interest. He needed an outlet for his rage and grief. He needed to take action, but his current circumstances demanded he temper his natural inclinations. The exams ended and the boy Kage gave a speech before closing out the ceremonies. A was ushered into what passed for quality accommodations in Suna. The Sand Rat had requested the Kage and their parties attend a banquet before they departed, starting 2 hours after the end of the exams. He needed to think, he needed to plan. Naruto gave Tsunade, Orochimaru, and Kakashi a full accounting of events that transpired to bring him to Suna, and the Godine was furious at herself for believing A would attack Oto first. It was too indirect for him, and she'd been too clever by half and put her village at risk. At A for both planned attacks. And for her favorite Gaki. She saw it in his eyes, the kind of tired that wasn't of the body nor the mind. Just the weight of death, and having delivered a great deal of it. Few truly knew what that felt like. Even fewer knew what it was to be able to kill some of the best of the elemental nations before they could even attempt to fight, surrender, run away, or call for help. With all the training they do to perfect being assassins, striking enemies where they are most vulnerable, there is still something about the challenge of a fight that gives one a sense of honor, of humanity. When that challenge is gone, you can start to feel like a butcher. She'd seen that look on Jiraiya's face before he took in the Am trio. She'd seen it in her own eyes. "Are you okay?" she heard Kakashi ask. Naruto initially shrugged in response, but the five eyes on him demanded an actual response. "It is what it is. They were there for a tussle, they got one. I'm not going to sink into the pits of despair over it," Naruto said, pouring himself a glass of water. All watched as a layer of frost enveloped the glass before he took a drink. Tsunade knew that wasn't really the truth, and yet, it wasn't a lie but a resolution to endure. More importantly, what is to be done about a Kikuku? Clearly he doesn't return to Kumo. Nor his escorts. Orochi chimed in. Tsunade didn't immediately respond. Her fellow Sannin wasn't wrong. A had to die, it was the removal of a potential reasonable actor, Darui, that bothered her. Well, one of the things that could get messy, Kakashi added but didn't disagree. A played his hand and was exposed, that didn't go unpunished. I can do it clean, and being in two places at once is no problem, Naruto said after taking another drink, savoring the cold liquid. No chance for an ambush, she is a censor. He made you before any of us knew you were here, said Kakashi. That's fine. Besides, A knows. If what I've been told about him is true, he'll want to show it down, so the censor will do half my job for me. I could go as additional backup, Orochi offered. No, Tsunade said, voice firm, indicating there would be no argument. Orochi, I need you with me as we go back with our participants. The two males in the room could tell that wasn't the whole truth but let it drop when Orochimaru didn't protest. So, do I have the all clear? Let's see how this dinner plays out. If Iwa has sided with Kumo, they may reveal it there. If so, Onoki needs to also be dealt with. Could you handle that, Naruto? Yes. What's wrong, old man? Kuretsuki asked. Her grandfather had been pacing since they entered their suite and hadn't stopped. She'd withheld asking until the rooms were thoroughly swept and she was reasonably sure it was safe to speak. A was angered when the Uzumaki joined us. That by itself means very little. The man has been preparing for war against Konoha and using Minato's boy as a propaganda tool from the start. No, it wasn't the anger that vexes me, Onoki explained as he continued to pace. He thought back to A's expression, the slight widening of the eyes, rapid blinking followed thereafter. Then the anger sat in. Of all the sitting cage, he was the worst at hiding his emotions, having always led by strength and strength alone. He was surprised. Before anything else, he was surprised the boy was there. That's not so shocking, Onoki-sama. You don't expect a Jinchuriki to just show up somewhere, Akatsuki reasoned. No, I don't think that's it. It is well known the Kazekage and the Uzumaki are friends. I think A has something planned and the boy being here jeopardizes it. There may be an opportunity here. If A's little scheme fails, then it is possible he will fall. If he dies, that increases our bargaining power and we could cut a great deal with the newest rakeage. If any or all of the Konoha party dies, then it's war and we let the two fight it out and potentially pick the scraps. Maybe an alliance with Kiri to target the weakest village. Maybe add Suna as well. If both A and the Namika's Hellspawn were to perish, then wouldn't that just be a reason to celebrate? Both villages dropping in power and prestige. A power vacuum would serve us well. Set us up nicely for the future, the old man muttered. Yay, but what if the entire Kumo delegation dies? Then the new rakeage would likely be that insufferable Kiribi, and he isn't fit for the job but also won't be moved to fight out of vengeance. We need Darui to survive. If the rakeage dies, Kuretsuki asked. Onoki nodded and neither of his companions said anything more, but Kuretsuki thought her grandfather made things needlessly complex with his waffling for an advantage. She held no love for any village but her own and detested the yellow flash like all right thinking it were nin, but the benefits of war seemed way too hypothetical and abstract to her. Kumo had already shown itself to be untrustworthy when they tried to kidnap the Hyuga heiress, regardless of how they tried to spin it. She worried her grandfather was moving past aged wisdom to the realm of a relic, unable to contend with or absorb new ways of thinking. We really need to get our intelligence network up to par, May said in frustration. Like the other cage, she saw A's reaction and knew something was awry. The problem was, what information she had was so sparse she could do little but speculate. And while it wouldn't serve her to be ignorant of the tensions of the other villages, it was of no great value to get involved. Kiri wasn't weak, but it was not the time to test its hard-won stability, not unless absolutely necessary. Maybe there would be a play, some advantage to exploit, but from where May sat, doing nothing was the correct course for now. Things may come to a head tonight. Stay diligent but do not make unnecessary moves. Let these mainlanders handle their own problems, as of right now none of them are active threats to Kiri. The Uzumaki clan head with several of our famed swords suggests otherwise, May-sama, Ao remarked. Well, he seems like a reasonable, young man. I'm sure he and I could reach a satisfactory agreement given the chance. Or I could challenge him, May-sama, Chojuro offered. Why use violence when words will suffice, Chojuro-kun? And Ao, I doubt he holds a grudge for actions committed generations before he was ever born. He wasn't raised an Uzumaki, so he wasn't taught to hate us, I bet. If something does happen, May-sama, what would you have us do? Chojuro asked. Nothing, stay out of it. And until something does happen, we will match the graciousness shown to us by our host. A was pacing across the room, and that was never a good sign. His heavy footsteps adding a slight tremor to the ground. Now free of enemy eyes, the large cage was venting his anger with abandon. The little shit, he yelled as he clenched his fists. He killed Dodai, killed our ambush unit. Son of a whore. And now they plot. I guarantee they are planning to take us out. Asama, we don't know Dodai is dead. We don't know anything. Maybe he used the Haration to get here and left before the attack on Konoha ever started. You don't even believe that. A bellowed to his second in command. Darui merely adjusted in his seat. I wasn't wrong, he didn't believe that, but it was also true they had no confirmation about anything. He was simply advising restraint. Reikage-sama, we're currently at a disadvantage and we have to assume the Konoha contingent plans to act. Maybe we should slip out tonight and not give them the chance, she suggested. Run. I yelled. You expect me to run from them? Yes, run. Because this isn't about your ego, Darui cut in, losing his patience. You said you'd lead Kumo to greater heights, that we'd finally be free to be what we were always meant to be. Fine then, but you have to be alive. Revenge will have to wait. You never understood, Darui. You're so used to the status quo you can't even see the effects. I'm done letting Konoha decide. I'm done tailoring my actions to them. Kumo is the strongest village, I am the strongest cage, and when I say I will avenge my ninja, I will do so. Tsunade, Orochimaru, Kakashi, and the brat die. It's just that simple. But you two will leave tonight along with our participants. Don't stop, don't look back. Gaara quickly read over the note that was delivered to him by the panther cub. His facial expression remained passive, betraying none of his thoughts. It wasn't good. He'd hoped this could be the start of something different, a break from the cycle of bloodletting that only justified more of the same. But A had attempted to attack Konoha, planned to assassinate Tsunade and company. That couldn't be overlooked, especially not by Konoha. Known as the peaceful village, they still had to remind the other villages their cooperative streak had limits. Thank you, little one, Gaara said as he scratched the summons under its chin, gaining a purr in response. The courier dispelled and Gaara turned to his siblings and explained the contents of the letter. Whatever is to happen won't happen here, of that I am certain, but it appears we must ready for war in earnest. Temari and Kankuro both frowned. War was such a heavy word and an experience none of the trio had, something that could not be said for the other major villages. Training and education can take one far, but they knew there were limitations, and this was not something you generally wanted to do while learning on the job. Shit, Kankuro exclaimed. Is there a way out, a way to resolve this? Gaara shook his head. Even if A were willing to deal, and there would be no reason for Tsunade to believe it nor ignore what he'd been planning. Unless he was willing to submit a significant form of restitution, but it was highly unlikely. Gaara would continue on, however. Maybe things wouldn't change tonight, but it could be a step toward progress. We only have about an hour before dinner is to begin. If you would both oversee the final arrangements, I need to finalize my own. His siblings acquiesced and departed Gaara's office. The hour quickly passed and the Gokage and the guards, plus Naruto, were seated at the large circular table as several servers in service whites brought out the first course of the kaiseki. As the appetizers were sat and the waitstaff exited, all waited as Gaara shared some words. I appreciate you all for indulging my request and not immediately returning to your villages. For too long, the 5 great shinobi villages have been separated and mistrustful, only forging alliances to better fight our wars. I do not believe that can be solved over one meal, but I hope it can, and you will allow it to be a start. The grudges of old limit us. With that being said, please enjoy. Murmurs of appreciation fill the room, then the attendees begin their meals in earnest. May was surprised by the colorful array of small dishes arranged on her plate, having assumed the desert village wouldn't be so bountiful. More courses were brought out as polite conversation was had. This seemed to offend A as he decided during the Futamono course to speak for the first time. So, you want to cement our stagnation into an alliance, Kazekage? Everyone took notice of his disrespect. If we are stagnating, how could continuing to do as we've done solve it? Gaara asked, choosing to ignore the slight. That's simple, we allow the strong to prove out and rule. Because strength is what determines our course. Not politics and backroom trade deals. Power, the ability to make one act against their own interests outside of their own volition. Everything else is just window dressing. Sounds like chaos, the weak constantly seeking to unseat the strong. How would that be an improvement, Reikage-sama? May asked. If you can't control your people, you shouldn't lead your people. If you can't keep your village, you shouldn't have it. In the warring clans era, we lost the weaker clans. And all the potential within them, not to mention all the talent untapped by non-clan ninja. Romanticizing the past doesn't help us progress, Tsunade said. Kikuku, besides, by that logic Konoha should be the only remaining hidden village. Would you have preferred us to have slaughtered all of Kumo? Orochimaru added and took delight in A's frown. You would have failed if you tried, but what came of any of the wars we waged? Nothing. Nothing fundamentally changed because Konoha will only allow their vision of growth while stamping down anything that threatens it. You win wars because you fight to outlast your enemy, not actually defeat them. The Sandaime called off Minato when he had Iwa under his sandals. And what? You expect to do something similar with his bastard? A finished by staring at Naruto, a Naruto more interested in his soup than the ravings of a soon-to-be dead man. Can he even speak without permission? If you think he has what Minato had, you're deluded. You're very loud. So he does speak. Tell me, boy, do you think you are your father's equal? I honestly don't see how that's a concern of someone who decidedly wasn't my father's equal. 9 may not equal 10, but it's still greater than 7 last I checked. Darui and she tensed when they saw the scowl on A's face. The man looked ready to attack. And in truth, he wanted to. I wanted to say damn the consequences and murder the arrogant brat. Kill each of them, let them see how powerless they would be against his lightning armor and his speed. But now wasn't the time. He couldn't enjoy it here. It's interesting you say that, as in a different world I could have been your father. How about that? Matter of fact, I'll sign a peace treaty right now if you call me Otu-sama. Come on, say it. Naruto took it as a sign of maturity that he hadn't murdered Darui, and she as a matter of reflex. He considered it a mark of personal growth. Oh, he was furious. That this man would call attention to the attempted kidnapping, that would have no doubt led to repeated bouts of sexual violation, to goad him was beyond anger-inducing. But he had his mission and it was not the time to act. However, A would have to be punished. Somewhat surprising you don't have a child of your own, a man of your age. I guess manners weren't the only thing Dodai failed to teach you. Maybe he can try again once you return to Kumo. A didn't know what angered him more, the boy having the balls to taunt him or the bored look the little bastard was giving him as he said it. A felt a hand on his shoulder just as his rage was nearing its zenith. He turned and saw Darui trying to silently communicate an obvious truth: it wasn't the time. But it would be, soon. He'd put the Uzumaki through the ringer and show him what a true cage fought like. Then he'd end his life and the rest of them. Eventually, all of Konoha. None of them were a match for B and him. Only the surety of his future victory stayed his hand. The boy would have one last night. His discourteousness aside, the Reikage has a point. Shinobi alliance work when there is a mutual enemy, not when created to avoid one. The very idea that any of us would permanently join some kind of agreement that reduced our authority for some nebulous benefit in the future is absurd. I don't like war, I've seen more of it than any in this room, but words are cheap. Our actions are what carry real value, and if it must be war, then it must. Getting too comfortable in an alliance is just asking to be taken advantage of eventually. If you lack honor, you cannot see it in others, Onoki Dono, Tsunade said. Our actions only carry weight because of the death we cause, no more and no less. If you treat an agreement as just a maneuver, then that's all it can be. The question is, what do you want specifically? And how can war gain it? I want an end to Konoha's continental hegemonic order, Ace said. Good luck with that, Tsunade said with a snort. Soon talks cooled down and returned to polite topics, but the tension never fully left, as all knew one wrong word could spark conflict. Fortunately, the dinner ended without incident and all returned to their rooms. Well, all but one, as Kakashi was currently looking at a closed, locked and sealed door to what was to be his room for the night. It had been unythfully commandeered by Naruto and Orochimaru, neither making a secret of what was to transpire. Kakashi rubbed the back of his head and looked toward Tsunade, who only rolled her eyes. Fine, brat, but don't get any ideas or you'll be introduced to a game I call Kakashi Ball. Got it, she said as she entered her room, Kakashi not far behind. Ma, Tsunade-sama, I would never try anything untoward. Aha, you'll be taking the couch. I wouldn't have it any other way. As Tsunade and Kakashi were settling into the temporary arrangement, Orochi pushed her lover against the door as soon as she was sure their privacy was protected. Eagerly, she pulled him down into a kiss, briefly realizing he'd grown a little. Her finger assaulted his clothing, she dispatching it with the same ruthless efficiency she would any other enemy that stood in her way. His armor, shirt, and mesh were quickly removed before he returned the favor, or removing her kimono. A blink of an eye, or at least that's how long it felt before they were in the shower, exchange long kisses and exploring each other's bodies. Until Naruto settled on her most sensitive area, going over it in slow, circular motions with his middle finger. Gradually the speed and pressure would increase until she was experienced her first climax of the night. Time went hazy again as she came down from her orgasm, as they were now in bed. Naruto was content to pay further attention to the same area, this time utilizing his tongue as Orochi ran her fingers through his crimson locks. And again she was brought to climax, the events of the night decidedly not in her original plan, as she was to be in control. But it was a wonderful derailment, and she'd have allowed it to continue if not for the cocky grin adorning her lover's face. That simply wouldn't do. With ease, she reversed their positions and straddled the object of her obsession. She smiled when she heard a familiar moan. Not so smug now, Naruto-kun, she thought as she watched his eyes shut tightly in response to her machinations. It was her turn to don a smirk as she rode Naruto, putting the durability of the bed to the test. Orochi kept her pace, even as Naruto sat up and pulled her toward his body, his breathing labored. They soon found their mutual release and shared a final kiss before parting. Lying on his chest, Orochi heard Naruto chuckle at seemingly nothing. She looked up, her yellow orbs expressing the unasked question. Naruto, looking down at her, understood. I love you, no, he said and laughed again when she went wide-eyed. I'm not saying it so you will or for any reason other than it's the truth, and I want you to know, Tobio, he assured her. Even with his reassurance, Orochi was thrown for a loop. She never thought of her relationships in terms of love. Sure, she'd do anything for Tsunade and Koharu, as they would do the same for her and helped her when she was younger manage her impulses. Was that love? They'd never said it. Had they assumed she knew or that she wouldn't care? But even in comparison, she knew Naruto was different. The potential life growing in her womb was a testament to that. Was that love? She'd known for some time he'd be hers, that he was already interested only eased things along. He was to be hers, and in exchange, she'd see to his happiness and the safety of what he valued. It was a perk of not fighting his fate. Yes, he made her happy. He challenged her to grow, to consider things in ways she'd never have before. Even Jiraiya's crappy belief in peace sounds more reasonable coming from Naruto. Yes, his smile often makes her feel funny, and when hugs her from behind and lightly kisses her neck, her pulse would quicken. Those were just biological responses. Sure, she could enjoy his company even if they were just quietly reading, her feet propped up on his lap. And yes, she'd willingly subject her body to the trauma that is pregnancy to give him a child. But that was only because she was high. Orochi's thought process halted. Did she really see herself that way? She'd need to talk to Tsunade, she was sappy and would know. Besides, it was time to share the good news. Naruto-kun, can you enter Sage Mode? She requested. He nodded, having given her time to sort out her thoughts and not taking her silence personally at all. As if he were born to it, Naruto allowed the surrounding natural energy to enter his chakra system, instantly balancing it with his own source of power. For one who has never experienced Sage Mode, it was almost indescribable, the sensation of being connected to and aware of life. Its beauty, its flaws and all the complexities therein. And it happened so fast, the serene mindset allowed a sage to not be overwhelmed by the onslaught of new information. Taking a deep breath, Naruto narrowed his focus to his immediate surroundings, to Orochi and himself, and a partial presence. Not fully life, slighter. Like Kurenai-sensei when he remotely checks on her but even fainter, Naruto was now the one to go wide-eyed as his toad-like eyes stared into Orochi's slitted pupils. She nodded at his unasked question and found herself in a tight embrace, though not enough to cause any pain, with her maelstrom thanking her. How far are you along? Is this why Oba-chan didn't want you to come with me to face A? When can we know the sex? Kikuku, calm down, Naruto-kun, she said, not having seen him this excited since before his training trip. 8 weeks? Yes, another 8 to 12 weeks. This is so awesome. I can't wait to tell Shika, Shino, and Kurenai-sensei, although, can we wait until after she has her baby? I don't want to steal her thunder, Tobayo. Of course, Naruto-kun. She's due soon so it's no problem to wait. Yano, you're really throwing my grand seduction plan out of whack, Orochi-chan. I thought it was a plan to woo me, she said with a teasing grin. Naruto shared it before it dropped. Shit, he said. A isn't in the village. Damn it, I have to run him down, he said as he got out of bed. He channeled chakra to his right hand and placed it over his left pec. A seal activated and he was fully dressed and armed. Naruto quickly activated another seal on his left wrist as he approached Orochi, kissing her deeply and placing an object in her hand. Think about it and give me your answer later, he said as he dashed out the window, his sage mode buttressing his already impressive speed. Orochi opened her hand and found a black ring box. Once he was out of the village, Naruto performed an impressively long shunshin. And another, until he was standing in front of the 2 large chakra signatures he'd sensed. He knew the 2, they were well known as Kumo's guardians, Kiribi and Yugito-ni. Naruto was surprised. Not to see them, that was whatever, no it was something else entirely. I'm not surprised your Raikage is a coward but I am a little shocked he'd let the other Kage know it, Naruto said. Kiribi snickered while Yugito sneered. He didn't much care how they felt about it. Naruto made a wood clone to deal with them. Wait oh, Mr. 9-0. Didn't come for a test of might, let's avoid a pointless fight, fool ya fool. You really do rap when you talk. Honestly thought Jiraiya was being a little racist on that one. And sure, you 2 stand down and we don't have to fight. Do you really think we'll let you run down Asama so you can try to kill him? Yugito yelled at the Uzumaki. She promptly found herself unable to breathe, move, or even think as Naruto applied a great deal of pressure on her. I think that anything you do is a meaningless gesture and I don't have time to teach babies how to breathe in my presence. You're outclassed, girl. Don't make a jerk of yourself. A deal I'm proposing based on the Brotherhood of the Chosen. A is a hothead but I can't let him wind up dead. Take us in his place and that'll change his pace. That's a stopgap measure. He'll simply bide his time until he can attack us to free the both of you or he'll kidnap someone of high value to Konoha to force a trade. He won't be reasoned with so he doesn't get reasoned with. He gets me and that has one outcome. If A betrays I off myself without delay. Word is bond. Naruto looked at his fellow container while thinking. Kurama would have alerted him if he were lying so he wasn't. True, he could run down A, the wood clone could stall these 2. However, this might be the only way to avoid war. It was a low percentage play but maybe it was the kind of foolish bet this world needed. He needed to know why Kiribi was going this far. Why put yourself in a jackpot for A? He caused this and he should suffer the consequence. Family, 9-0. Shit, Naruto thought. If you'd pulled that shit an hour ago we'd be brawling right now, Naruto said before his clone and he blurred in front of Yugito and B respectively. Each placed an assorted sealing array on them, one was a Hiraishin Shiki and the other a bomb. He explained the latter to them and made sure they understood what would happen if they stepped out of line. Kiribe understood his compliance was the only thing keeping his brother alive as Gyuki relayed something about 9-0 felt very familiar and very dangerous to him. Let's go back to Suna. I hope Oba-chan doesn't kick my ass, Naruto said, and the trio of containers made their way back to the nearest shinobi village. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.